So I just spoke with a couple who moved to Coquitlam thinking that it was going to simplify their life. They'd have more space and less stress. Well, now they're stuck with a longer commute, higher costs, and they're quietly looking for a way out. You see, everyone talks about why you should move to Coquitlam, but here's the truth that nobody really tells you. A surprising number of people, they end up regretting it, and it's not for the reasons that you might think. Because it's not just about housing prices or traffic, right? What catches people off guard is the day-to-day reality. It's the emotional mismatch between what they pictured and what life actually feels like once they're in it. And, by the time they actually see it clearly, well, they're already living it. So listen, if you're watching this, there's a good chance that you're thinking about a move. Maybe you're upsizing, you're downsizing, relocating for work or retirement. And, chances are you're financially capable, but you're also trying to be smart here. You've seen what happens when people rush into a big decision like buying a home with high hopes and really not enough clarity. Because when it comes to where you live, regret, it doesn't really just hit you once and then suddenly disappear, right? It tends to linger. And it shows up in things like your daily commute, in the upkeep that maybe you didn't quite plan for, or in the lifestyle that you thought you were buying, but you never really got. And so in this video, I'm going to walk you through the top reasons that people regret moving to Coquitlam. And I'm going to show you how to avoid every single one of them. Because, once you see what often causes the regret, you can avoid those traps that most people, they fall into. And stick with me here, because one of the biggest regrets that I'm going to show you near the end is something that most people, they don't even consider. But once you do, it's going to change the way you think about where you choose to live. Okay, so let's start off with one of the most common surprises, and that is the cost of living. It's not just about the house price, but everything else that comes with it. Now, one of the biggest shockers that people deal with is how expensive Coquitlam has become. Everyone assumes that it's cheaper than Vancouver, and I guess technically it is, but the gap, that is closed more than most people realize. And here's the thing. It's not just about what the house costs. It's everything else included. Things like the property tax, utilities, upkeep, all of those things, right? And of course, if you're moving from something like a condo into a detached home, well, you're talking about a whole new set of expenses. And those things, they add up very quickly. I had one client who told me flat out that they thought that they would be saving money, but it ended up that they were spending more money every single month than what they were when they were living in Burnaby. And this kind of thing, it happens more than you think. And it's not always obvious when you're running the numbers, during a showing or maybe browsing listings online. So before you even think about making an offer, make sure you run those numbers, okay? And not just the mortgage either. We're talking the whole picture. You want to include the taxes, the commute costs, repairs, yard work, all of it, because regret, it doesn't usually show up right away. It typically creeps in kind of slowly, right? Month after month, until one day you're sitting at your kitchen table and you're thinking, wait, how did this get so expensive? And if you think that's the biggest blind spot for most buyers, well, it's not. Because the moment you move in and you start your routine, another kind of regret, it often hits harder. It's that daily grind of getting from point A to point B. You see, I guess a lot of people, they think that moving to Coquitlam means more space and, more peace, right? But they underestimate how much more time they're going to be spending in their car. Low heat highway, the Barnett, it all looks manageable until you're doing it 5 days a week. And then suddenly that 30-minute drive might become a 50-minute drive or more. So, yes, there is the SkyTrain, but not everyone lives close to it. And if you're up in maybe Burke Mountain or one of the new developments, well, you're going to be driving, and a lot. And in the wintertime, you're adding even more time in your car. So if commute time matters to you, and let's be honest, for most people it does, make sure that you test it out, all right? You want to make sure that you drive during the rush hour and both ways to and from work. And, don't just take someone's word for it. Don't trust that on a good day, it's going to be an estimated amount of time. Make sure you actually test it as if your life depends on it, because your time, it absolutely does. Okay, so I want you to pause for a second and picture yourself months into your home. And I want you to see in your mind's eye, are you still enjoying that bigger space and maybe the better views? Or are you waking up earlier, getting home later, and wondering where all of your free time went? And once you've wrapped your head around that commute, there is another layer that a lot of people, they tend to overlook. And it's the one that shows up gradually. And that is the work of maintaining a home that you just bought. You see, maintenance, it tends to sneak up on people. And, yes, Coquitlam's gorgeous, no question. They've got the trees, the mountains, the trails, but it also rains, and it rains a lot. And if your home's on a hill, which many neighborhoods are, well, you're dealing with things like sloped driveways, runoffs, slippery roads in the wintertime. And of course, if you've just moved into a detached home, you've also got gutters to clean, right? Lawns to mow, roofs that need to be inspected. You're either going to be doing work yourself or you're going to be paying someone else to do that for you. So either way, it's going to be time or money. And sometimes it's going to be both. Oftentimes people come from condos thinking, finally some space, some freedom. But what they don't see coming is how much that freedom is going to cost them in time, energy, and money. And, it's all in the upkeep, and that can really wear people down. So make sure that you're really honest with yourself about how much work you actually want to do. Because, a bigger backyard, it might sound amazing until the fall, right? When all of those leaves, they just keep falling down, and you have to rake them up day after day after day. Now, to be clear, there is a reason a lot of people move to Coquitlam in the first place, right? For a lot of folks, it really does offer that sweet spot of nature, space, and relative affordability. You get this incredible access to trails, to the mountains, to the parks, and a sense of calm that you just don't get in the city core. And the schools, they're also solid. The neighborhoods, they feel safe. For many people, it's exactly what they're looking for. But it is not automatic, right? You have to match the neighborhood and the property to your actual life and not just your wish list. All right, so let's shift gears a little bit here, because regret isn't always just about the money or the work. Sometimes it's about lifestyle. And the truth is, Coquitlam is not Vancouver, and it's not trying to be either. And that's totally fine, unless you're expecting otherwise. You see, if you're someone who thrives on culture or nightlife, boutique restaurants, walkable communities, well, you might find parts of Coquitlam a little bit quiet, right? And again, that's not a knock. It just means that you need to be real about what it is you want in your day-to-day life. So you want to make sure that you spend a weekend there, eat out, walk the neighborhood, talk to the locals. Don't just fall in love with the house, right? Make sure that the neighborhood fits your day-to-day life and not just what looks good on paper. And by the way, just when you think you found the perfect quiet pocket, there is another curveball that you might not see coming, and that is change. You see, Coquitlam is indeed changing, and it's changing fast. And, a lot of would-be buyers, they don't consider that. Right now, the city is pushing for more densification around the SkyTrain stations. And so that quiet street that you might want to buy on, well, it might not stay that way, right? With new towers, more traffic, construction noise. So before you buy, look into the city planning documents, all right? Ask what's coming to the area and talk to somebody who knows how to read those maps, because the park across the street, well, it could be a shopping mall in just 5 years from now. So here's the thing. When you look at the full picture, the cost, the commute, the lifestyle, and the way the city is growing, it all plays into how that move is actually going to feel once you're living it. But most of the time, regret, it comes down to this. People buy into the idea of what life could be instead of what it actually is. You see, you're not just buying a house, you're buying into a routine. How you spend your days, what your mornings look like, what your weekends feel like. And if that doesn't line up with the way you actually live right now, it's not going to magically click into place later on either. And this is where it really comes together. Regret, it often comes down to one simple thing, and that is people buying on potential and not reality. They see a promise of maybe growth, appreciation, or lifestyle, and they buy into it. But if that promise doesn't pay off fast enough, or maybe it doesn't pan out at all, well, that's when doubt creeps in very quickly. So if you've got your eye on a home, you want to ask yourself, would I still be happy here if nothing were to change for the next 5 years? And if the answer is no, well, it's probably not going to be the right move for you. And that one question, would I still be happy here if nothing else changed, is what separates wishful thinking from a very smart move. Now, here's what people who don't regret moving to Coquitlam, they get right. They choose based on fit and not fantasy. They buy in areas that already have the lifestyle features that they want, and they understand the costs. So they plan for maintenance, they test the commute, and they talk with an agent who understands what they actually need. So someone who, can point out the red flags and the things that might not work for their specific lifestyle, even if the home looks good on paper. And hey, listen, for every person who regrets their move, there's someone else who absolutely loves living in Coquitlam. They found the right pocket that fits their lifestyle. They're close to the mountains. They've got more space, and they really enjoy that quieter lifestyle. In other words, it works for them because they made the move with clarity, with clear priorities, and with a realistic view of what life would actually be like. And when you do that, well, Coquitlam, it doesn't just live up to your expectations. It actually beats them. And that's the best part. Once you understand what leads to regret, it's actually pretty easy to avoid. You just need to stop getting caught up in how great everything sounds at first, right? And really think about how your day-to-day life is going to look once you are living there. But listen, if you think that buying a home is straightforward, think again, because the truth is, most buyers, they don't realize that this system is stacked against them until it is too late and they're already locked in. So make sure you watch this next video popping up right now, because it could literally save you tens of thousands of dollars. And of course, if you have any questions about what we chatted about today, feel free to reach out. There is a link in the description box below. Otherwise, I will see you in the next video.